Omar, how is it going?
My start successful.
Hey, was just listening to RJ's call.
You want to pipe it in?
Um, hardware platform that shares.
Yeah, I mean they're just in the Q&A now.
Everything.
I mean,
is this the yesterday's call or today's call?
yeah, yesterday's.
Yesterday's
There wasn't
call, okay.
anything new,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's interesting. They said we're going to start by talking about the deal, and then we'll talk about the financing after. It really is some pretty masterful spin, and when I heard the announcement, I was like, oh my god, this sounds amazing. And then I actually started reading the details, and then you're like, okay, it actually took them. They said on the call, it took us months to negotiate this deal. And the deal got them, for now, 2 months of runway. So they probably spent more time negotiating the deal than the actual runway they gained, right? So if it takes them 3 months to secure 2 months of runway, that is probably not a great situation.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The stock pumped quite a bit last night. It was up 50%, and now it's come down, giving up half of that. Are you holding on to your put position?
Yeah, I did buy some puts just for fun. I also have 420 shares of Rivian. I found out the other week, but I think really when you look at, for example, the Xpeng deal, which was announced where Volkswagen put 700 million into Xpeng, it rallied, and then now it's lower than when it was when the deal was announced. You look at sort of similar deals, right? You look at the Ford Rivian deal, what price that was made at, the Mercedes Rivian deal, what price that was made at, and this one, it does kind of seem like after people start to digest this a little bit, they're going to realize that they're in need of funds. And, they're saying that this should be able to get them through R2, but it's obviously a very challenging situation that they're in. And it'll be interesting to see what their earnings look like for the quarter, especially with some of the upgrades they've been doing. I think they really needed a raise to answer investors' questions on this upcoming earnings report about really, just sort of looking at the numbers. I think they were starting to look a little scary, and they had to sort of come up with something. Um, and, here's the answer. Okay, well, we've got this joint venture. Yes, our cash is running low, but more cash is going to come in through this. But as you sort of read into the details, especially, I think Volkswagen's press release is really interesting because it had a very different tone than Rivian's press release. And they
Really?
made
How
it,
so?
well, they made it sound like they weren't sure if they were going to do the joint venture. I can kind of read it. I mean, I think it
Yeah,
sounds like they probably
would
will
you?
do it, but
Yeah, maybe if you can read it for us, that would be helpful because that's the kind of my first question last night when this came out and stock, increased by 50% in a matter of minutes. I was like, is this a done deal? Like, did they actually get the cash? Then we found out it's not really a $5 billion deal. They only got a few hundred million of the first half a billion, and maybe the next half a billion with price later. And then it depends on milestones, probably some gross margin profitability, a bunch of other stuff, and we don't even know those details. And I would be curious to see what they said on their press release. Right now, Tesla stock is up 4%. Rivian stock is up 20%, down from up 50%. Omar?
yeah, so I also commented the link in the space if you want to take a look yourself. This is on VolkswagenGroup.com. And it says Volkswagen AG resolves on investment by Volkswagen of initially 1 billion USD in Rivian Automotive Inc. and intends to establish a joint venture. Volkswagen resolves on investment by Volkswagen of initially $1 billion in Rivian and intends to establish a joint venture with Rivian in the area of electrical and electronic architecture. Total investments and the joint venture could grow up to $5 billion until 2026. The management board of Volkswagen today resolved, with the approval of the supervisory board of Volkswagen, that Volkswagen will enter into a convertible promissory note purchase agreement with Rivian Automotive. Under the terms of this agreement, Volkswagen will grant Rivian a convertible note in the amount of $1 billion. The note will convert into a direct shareholding of Volkswagen in Rivian upon the receipt of the necessary regulatory approvals, but not before 1st of December 2024. So what is a convertible note? A convertible note is debt that can be converted into common shares. So they're actually paying 4.65% interest annually on this debt. So they're going to be holding it for at least 6 months. Even if the deal concludes before then, they have to hold the debt for at least 6 months. So they're going to have to actually pay Volkswagen about $22 million in interest. So for Volkswagen right now, it's kind of the same as having the cash in the bank, except they also get this equity. So, in the United States, we have this thing called CFIUS. They have to approve any transaction in which a foreign company buys more than 5% of a company. So this $1 billion is about 10% of Rivian, maybe about 7%, depending on what the 45-day weighted price of the shares are. So, yeah, that needs to be approved. Assuming they get that approval, then they're going to convert it into common shares. But if they don't get the approval, then it's just debt that Rivian eventually has to pay back and pay interest on, right? So that's, I think, important to note. That it's sort of a convertible note. So Volkswagen's purchased the convertible note, but for them, it's like, okay, convertible note, they're going to pay interest on it. It's the same as having it in, in our treasury, right? So the note will convert into a direct shareholding of Rivian, but not before December 1st, 2024. The size of the shareholding is determined in accordance with certain average share prices. For one half of the equity, it's I think $10 and something, and then the other, it's the volume weighted thing. So then, in addition, Volkswagen and Rivian intend to establish a joint venture for the purpose of the joint creation of the next generation electronic architecture for electric vehicles. Volkswagen and Rivian shall each hold a 50% stake in the joint venture, and it shall be equally controlled. Upon successful implementation of the joint venture, Volkswagen would receive immediate access to Rivian's current electrical and electronic architecture for use in its electric vehicles. So if they do decide to establish the joint venture, then Rivian immediately gets access to all of the electronic and electric architecture of Rivian's current vehicles instantly. And the establishment of the joint venture depends on a series of different parameters. In particular, the final results of the further review of technical feasibility of the integration of the electrical and electronic architecture into the vehicles of Volkswagen, the further negotiation between the two parties, as well as regulatory approvals. This is the key part. Against this background, a final decision on the establishment of the joint venture has not yet been made. Okay? So they're saying we're doing this convertible note, $1 billion invested in Rivian. Right now it's debt, but they're going to convert it to common shares if regulators approve. But we're still deciding whether to do the joint venture. And the way they're talking about it, it sounds like it's a done deal. So I assume it is kind of a done deal, but they're saying that it depends on, can we actually use their electrical architecture in our vehicles? Is that actually feasible? If it's not actually feasible to do it, then why establish a joint venture? It's pointless, right? We're just wasting money. Then the further negotiation between parties. So there's other, items that they have to discuss, have to finalize before they can agree. But I'm sure, they can agree on some terms that work, probably. And then regulatory approval. I imagine regulators would approve this. It doesn't seem like a national security threat. I think we're, friendly enough with Germany, but you never know. The Justice Department or something might decide they want to block it, but I'd probably give that a low probability. Or, they could just sort of get cold feet for whatever reason. So, Volkswagen is saying very clearly here they haven't yet made a decision. So there is always the risk that they could decide not to do it, and this is only a $1 billion instead of a $5 billion. Then they say, in case the joint venture would be established successfully, Volkswagen intends to make further investments in shares of Rivian or in the joint venture in the amount of $4 billion. The additional investment in shares of Rivian would be made in two tranches of $1 billion each in 2025 and 2026, and would be contingent on Rivian and the joint venture achieving certain milestones. Okay. So the $1 billion additional investment in 2025 and 2026, it's not automatic. It's if the joint venture is going well. AKA, this is Volkswagen with the gun to their head saying, you better give us all of the sort of technology you want, or we're not going to give you the additional funding. And you can already kind of sense the tension on the call. RJ saying, well, we're not giving them anything with our motors, our propulsion, our autonomy. This is just for the sort of zonal ECU and the electronics and that type of stuff, which, you know, that is something I think they could definitely use help with. But I can already sense that there's going to be some tension about, okay, share with us all this stuff, but don't share with us, the stuff you don't want to share, right? They're obviously still competitors. They feel entitled now that they've made this equity investment to really get a lot of IP, I think. And Rivian's going to want to limit that, so it's clear there's going to be tension there. And someone
Yoda.
even on the call brought up, they said, most of these joint ventures, including your joint ventures, haven't really gone that well in the automotive world.
Yeah.
So, and then I think there's just a little bit more. It says, with respect to the joint venture, Volkswagen would provide payment upon the foundation of the joint venture of $1 billion and grant a loan in the amount of $1 billion in 2026. If the joint venture will be successfully implemented and certain further milestones are achieved, the total investment of Volkswagen shares in Rivian, as well as in equity and in debt in the joint venture, would be in aggregate a total amount of $5 billion by 2026, in which the amount of $2 billion USD would be paid out in the fiscal year 2024. The
Yeah.
announced transaction could result in an unplanned cash flow of 2 billion euros in the current fiscal year. Therefore, Volkswagen's updating its financial forecast as follows: less liquidity and less net cash flow.
All right. Yoda, what do you think?
Hey, Omar, who says MBAs are useless and engineers are king? I mean, this is a great deal for VW. It sounds like that they're playing bank here through this convertible arrangement here, whereby it's actually not in VW's best interest that they get approval. Now, likely this is going to get approved by the regulators, but if not, they actually play bank and make interest. At the same time, they're playing robbers. While this is all going on, they get access to the IP. 10 cents on a dollar, right? If they had to buy Vivian outright, it's 15 billion, but they can kind of do this with $1 billion, if at all. So
Some
yeah,
IP,
some
not
IP,
all
some
IP,
IP,
some IP.
sure, yeah, yeah. But anyway, thanks for the breakdown. But this is a very lucrative deal by VW.
Danny.
Hey, do you think Tesla will be using its Tesla stores as Robotaxi depot, like a huge advantage?
We're sticking with Rivian for now. Freddie?
Yeah, I would agree with Yoda. I mean, we saw how the stock price shot up when Volkswagen announced this deal. Imagine if negotiations break down later this year, next year. I feel like VW could be in a position just to then buy Rivian at some point if this deal falls through. They're definitely banking here.
Why would they buy Rivian?
Why would they buy Rivian?
Rivian literally has nothing to offer to Volkswagen. I mean, what do they do better than Tesla? Yeah, Volkswagen can't license from Tesla if they needed to, if they wanted to.
Well, that's it. Comparing it to Tesla, I mean, I think
Why wouldn't they buy today, right?
I think because they want to get it cheaper, and I think that this could be a strategy to, if the deal falls through.
Yeah, so
that's-
so we want to get it cheaper. So let's announce a life-saving, bridge funding that will push up the stock price 50%. That's their plan. Come on, Omar.
So, I think it is possible that Herbert Diess wants it in his portfolio, but as I researched this a little more last night, I realized that, this is not the first joint venture they've done. They had a joint venture with Ford and they were supposed to develop vehicles together. And Ford eventually decided that it made more sense to just use their own technology rather than to try and use Rivian. So then you had Mercedes. They were supposed to, I think, develop a van together or something for the European market. And then they decided not to do that. Amazon, they had the vans with them. I think they're now ordering less vans. They're now starting to sell vans to other people. So a lot of these joint ventures in the past, which, you know, started at much higher share prices, have turned out in the companies realizing they actually don't want to work together. So is there really a joint venture here? 80% of the deal is contingent on this joint venture happening. And they specifically called out in the press release feasibility. They're studying the feasibility. Now, I have to imagine they're calling up Ford and um, what was the other company, Mercedes, and asking them, well, why did you eventually decide you didn't want to use it? And I don't know what Volkswagen is thinking internally, but it's easy to imagine how it could be kind of difficult to actually use that in Volkswagen vehicles. I mean, it sounds like a big headache, a major change in the electrical architecture like that, while keeping your existing supplier relationships, which are very political, and, you know, keeping that continuancy of the Volkswagen brand while changing the entire internal architecture of the vehicle. It doesn't sound as easy as it is on paper.
Quiet.
Hey, you guys, did anybody just see Bugatti is owned by Volkswagen? 5 hours ago, they just dropped that Robotaxi YouTube on CarWow and on Top Gear. Maybe that has something to do with it.
There's a lot of robotaxi announcements coming around, Omar. A lot of people have questions on this topic in the replies, in YouTube live chats, on Patreon. Remax announced a whole robotaxi as well. What's going on here? Do you think people are trying to ride Tesla's PR, Tesla's hype cycle?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think definitely Elon talking about robo taxis and 8.8 plays a part into it, but really it's just that the technology is actually ready now to do a real robo taxi. So this has moved from science fiction to more let's actually do something now. In terms of this Rimac Bugatti robotaxi, I mean, it's hard to really take this seriously. They say they're not doing the technology themselves, so they say they're going to work with Mobileye. Mobileye doesn't really have any real robotaxi service. I mean, they may have something in Israel, maybe, but they they don't have many robotaxis running in the real world. So it's hard to really take it that seriously. I mean, I would take maybe the Zeekr robotaxi that Waymo's doing more seriously because they've demonstrated they can actually get cars up and running in the real world driverless. So that will probably actually be a real driverless robotaxi. This one, I don't expect you're going to see it anytime soon, just given that they're not doing the technology. And I mean, at the point where this thing becomes feasible, there will be all kinds of robo taxis. If it's really just possible to buy the whole technology from somebody else, then the other aspect of it is Rimac Bugatti makes multi-million-dollar supercars. Okay, they make these things like by hand in many cases. Their production number is very, very low. Okay, we're talking about like hundreds, not thousands. So when we're talking about who's going to win in mass producing robo taxis, I'm going to be shocked if it's Bugatti. It I just don't think they have the mass manufacturing expertise. I would again look at like maybe a Chinese company like Zeekr or a Tesla. They might actually be able to succeed in really making millions of these things. That's what's needed. And if Bugatti started making millions of robotaxis, it would be the first time they ever made a million of anything.
Yeah. Yoda, I don't know if you were here in yesterday's space, but we had next big feature in the second half of the space. And I asked him, what do you think Tesla's going to announce on 8.8? And he said he believes that some Chinese automakers will announce deals with Tesla to license FSD on 8.8. What do you think about that?
I think they should go alone first. So I think it would be premature for them to announce that the first kind of implementation and rollout involves a third party.
Yeah, that's what I said. Omar, what do you think?
I'm not expecting them to announce any licensing deals. I think it would be a huge crowd pleaser if they did. I think the market would love it. So I hope they do. But I'm not expecting any announcement to be ready at the time of the unveil. I think the unveil is really just going to focus on look, here's our vision of a driverless vehicle, dedicated robotaxi without controls. It's called the Cybercab. And here's a demo, right? We're going to show you it driving around without a driver. Maybe Elon rolls up on stage on it or something, right? And maybe they give some demo rides at the event. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. There may be a few surprises here and there. A licensing deal or a partnership would definitely get people excited, but I'm not expecting that. It'll be a nice surprise if it's there, but it's not part of my base expectation.
Danny.
Do you think only car companies can win the robotaxi game? Because you need depot just like Waymo, and they don't have a lot.
Omar?
I mean, I think we're really looking at like cars becoming a commodity. So nobody's going to make any money making the actual car in the future. And the cars will be purchased for vastly different criteria than today. People won't care as much about the look, about the acceleration. It'll just be what's the cost per mile and how well does it hold up?
Alex, how are you?
Doing good, thanks. So we're talking 8.8. I just joined, sorry.
Yeah, we talked about Rivian. We're talking about 8.8. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I just caught up on the Rimac Bugatti type robotaxi concept car. Yeah, I thought that was a little bit They have nothing ready, basically. They're talking about, we need to solve autonomy, we need to solve mass manufacturing, we need to solve like charging network and servicing network. Everything's, but like the main thing, their main challenge that they see is basically like how to offer luxury and comfort like to the masses. They even said like, so everybody can have a clean car. That means that, if you own your car and you're done cleaning it, well, Rimac is going to take care of that for you. You're going to have a clean car from now on. We're democratizing clean cars for the masses. So I don't know, it felt like really weird. And they're talking about that it's a prototype. For me, it's a concept car, 100%. It couldn't go on the road anywhere. They might be able to like steer it from point A to point B, but yeah, it has 7 lidars. It has, all the usual suspects but they had at least the vision inside, that you're sitting and you're playing video games or watching a movie. To go to what Omar was saying, like our criterias for cars in the future will not be the same. But one thing's for sure is the cost. Like, can you manufacture these at scale for a low cost, which makes the cost then per mile affordable?
Oh, Bugatti is an expert in low cost.
Yeah, exactly. Both of them manufacture, I looked it up, like it's around like 50 cars a year. So them combined, it's like 100 cars a year that sell for millions of dollars. So, okay, maybe they got the luxury and comfort down, no doubt about it, but they don't have a low cost solution for, luxury and comfort. They'll make you pay for it. So I don't know, everything seems stupid a little bit.
I mean, I don't know. I think what I would really want from them is actually just give me a Rimac Nevera Robotaxi. So just maybe like a Robotaxi modeled after the Rimac Nevera. I'm late to the doctor. You can call your Rimac Robotaxi 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. Your drink goes flying all over the place. Your coffee flies out the window, but you make it to the doctor appointment on time.
Yeah, and it's weird. Just a little comment. I didn't clip it in the post I did of the video because I thought it was like maybe too stupid. Maybe I'll do it. But at the end, like the interviewer says, well, Rimac is not just like a hypercar company. It's a tech company. They know so much about batteries and cameras and sensors, to make like a safe autonomous car. And I'm like, what is he talking about? Like they're using off the shelf parts and plugging it in, and they've never used it in real world applications. So, they're not designing their sensors. They're just, buying them. And I don't know, it feels the whole thing is a hype, and everybody's following, let's be honest, everybody's following Elon's lead on this, always. So he talks about Robotaxi, he talks about safety, he talks about, the future of mobility and everything. And everybody's like, well, we need to do something. We have to be in the news cycle at least a day or two with our own thing that we're saying we're doing the same thing as well. They're always following, never leading.
Omar, let's switch to FSD 12. Elon replied about 12.4.2. What did you think about his reply?
Yeah, it was an interesting reply. I'm really excited for 12.4 to go out to everybody. I think everyone's really going to like the hands-free. Even though the cabin camera is more strict, it's much better overall. So we've been waiting for another build, 12.4.2. We were hoping it was going to go out over the weekend. Didn't see that. Here we are now on Wednesday, and it's starting to go out to Tesla employees internally. So that's good news, assuming it does actually go out today. And if all goes well, it should continue to expand, maybe wave 1 tomorrow, maybe some customers by the weekend if we're lucky, if there aren't any issues. One thing that he did seem to stress is that it is safety critical issues that they were seeing. He said hard to improve comfort without increasing safety interventions. So, I think they're really challenged by trying to figure out how to train and iterate on this model. I think the progress is quite good. 12.4 is significantly better in miles per intervention than 12.3. It just really works most of the time now. They're definitely headed in the right direction, but if you just look at Elon's schedules, they obviously continue to be optimistic. he said we're going to have 3 major updates every 2 weeks. By mid-May it should be great. And I think 12.4 was actually the first of those 3 updates. So they haven't even gotten the first update out of those 3. Then he said, "Oh yeah, we're going to have 12.4 out, and by the end of June we'll have 12.5 and that'll be running on the Cybertruck." Well, it's the end of June and they haven't even gotten 12.4 out yet, right? So it's like some people in the comments are still going like, does this still mean 12.5 is coming soon to my Cybertruck? It's like, no, it's not coming soon to your Cybertruck if they haven't gotten 12.4 out, unfortunately. It's looking like maybe end of summer for 12.5 at this pace. And I don't know, maybe they figure out how to do it faster. Maybe some of the departures on the team have been affecting things. But, whatever the case, it looks like they are finally going to get 12.4 out. It'll probably be another month or 2 before 12.5. And highway end to end goes wide after that, which at that point, I think I'm probably going to do a coast to coast drive once we go end to end on the highway. But yeah, it's getting pretty good. I think everyone's really going to like it. Even though we have had to wait a long time, I think the bar is just getting very, very high. So, with the new driver monitoring system going to hands free, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny, and we can't afford to have anything happen. If anything happens, then they're going to say, put the nag back on. And that's going to be terrible. So, really, really needs to be good. And then the other thing is, it's now getting into the territory where it's so good, where it's working so often. Like most of the drives are zero intervention here in California that it now can't mess up. People are just going to be letting their guard down more and more. So you really have to be really, really good and not have any mistakes before you go wide. Um, and yeah, it's a very challenging thing to do. So I think hopefully we'll see 12.4 this weekend, but we also could not if there's more issues that pop up. And I think everybody's really going to like it. So as usual, we've been waiting longer than we like, but I think everyone will agree that it's going to be worth the
Yeah.
wait.
We have a lot of Rivian Bulls in the space right now as I kind of scroll through. If they want to come up and, argue their case, ask questions, maybe explain to us what we're missing, why Rivian will survive. I agree with Omar that this deal maybe extends their life by another couple of months, but that's about it. And earlier in the space, we talked about Volkswagen's press release, which is in the replies if you want to check it out. Omar mentioned that Volkswagen's press release of the deal has a different tone than how Rivian presented it. And it seems that the JV aspect of things is still TBD. It requires a lot of approvals, lots of milestones, but they didn't mention exactly which milestones, right, Omar?
Yeah. But
I mean, I'm
the
guessing
key
it has
is,
something to do with like gross margin or, R2 production or something along those lines. Who knows?
I think reading between the lines, it's key that they're saying, hey, you have to satisfy us with what the joint venture is doing, or we're not going to make these additional equity investments. And I thought it was interesting that they've spelled out that there are stipulations, there are milestones that have to be met. When I read the headline, I thought, oh, this is a $5 billion figure. Then you look into it and you go, okay, well, it's actually $3 billion into Rivian plus $1 billion plus $1 billion in debt for the joint venture. Then you read into it a little more and you go, okay, well, it's not actually 3 billion, it's 1 billion and maybe 2 more billion if everything goes well. And okay, well, is it going to go well? Well, every other joint venture they've done has actually fallen apart before they've, actually produced a product together. So, it's not necessarily 5 billion, it's 1 billion. And then you think like, okay, so, if this company has to raise funds to survive and it takes them 3 months to raise cash that keeps them alive for 2 months, by the time that, like they started the fundraising, by the time they finished the deal, they had already spent the money that they raised. Like, that's what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah. All right. We have Tech Geek Tesla on the board. John, go ahead.
Hey, everybody, longtime listener, first time speaker here. Thanks, Yaman. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on full self-driving here in Chicago. So I had the honor to take a drive here this morning with a U.S. Reuters Tech News reporter, and he filmed a rideshare experience with 1241 hands-free. It was a 22-minute drive and 8 miles, and it was 0 interventions, 0 disengagements. It went over railroad crossings, slowed down for
Chicago?
them.
That's one
In
of the
Chicago.
worst places for FSD. Wow.
It did amazing. It did really, really well. So I've been very impressed with this version. A little bit of uncertainty with lane selection, but overall, it's performed really well, and it's becoming more and more rare where I have to intervene or disengage. So very positive experience on my side. I really hope this can go wide soon because there's not really that many issues. I saw Omar that Elon mentioned it's going to be smoother, and I found that really hard to believe because it's already really smooth.
It's very smooth, but it's often, I think, a little hesitant. I think that's kind of what he meant.
True. Yeah, there are times where I turn it on, like in a parking lot, and it will just sit there. Needs a
Right,
little
yeah.
bit of a nudge,
I mean, I think they usually start new builds off on the cautious side and then they kind of dial it in. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what 1242 brings, but it definitely seems like they're on the right track here.
I would agree.
I mean, the hands-free is just kind of a very different experience when you can just sit there and not have to touch anything and your car just does an entire drive for you without you using your hands at all. I think it's really kind of a light bulb goes off over your head moment for people.
Right. It's a different experience. You do find yourself kind of tilting your chin up, looking forward a little bit more. I would say when the sun is setting or rising, especially, sometimes it doesn't recognize you're paying attention. So you have to really, it's just a different way of driving. And, that's the thing over time, you get used to things and then it becomes normal. And I would agree with your statements about the DMS being a little bit more sensitive or strict compared to before, but mostly it operates the same. I just think it's fascinating how it can detect when you're wearing sunglasses or a hat. But a lot of people don't realize you can wear a hat. You just can't cover your eyes with the hat. So it's completely fine to wear a hat while you're driving. And by the way, if you're wearing a hat or sunglasses, you can still use full self-driving. You just need to touch the wheel. It looks for that torque feedback.
From now on, the kind of hats you're allowed to wear will be approved by Ashok.
I could see that. Only cowboy hats if you live in Texas. No,
John, can you tell us a little about about your experience with hands-free driving? Is it making much of a difference for you?
Big difference. So it feels like a different software almost. The thing is, you still get the blue flashing bar at the top, but instead of touching the wheel, which we're all so conditioned to do, you just simply look up. And it's very easy to do that. And then it takes literally 500 milliseconds before that blue flashing bar disappears without you touching the wheel at all. So that experience is just really groundbreaking because you really feel like the car is doing everything. And it is. It's taking you from point A to point B. I often will arrive in a parking lot and the destination pin will lead me to the front door of the building I'm going to, but often the parking lot is on the way to the front door. So just for an example, I'm about to head over to the public library here in Schaumburg, and it passes through the parking lot, So what you do is you just simply disengage, and you can do this, by the way, with 12.3.6 or previous versions, as long as you have the auto park. You just disengage, it slows down, goes below, I think it's 12, 13 miles an hour, and then you select your parking spot and it parks itself. And you get out of your car. You don't even need to put it in park. So that experience from point A to point B is really incredible. And the hands-free portion, like I said, you wouldn't think it's that big of a deal, but it just makes it feel so much more polished and much more robust of a software.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I really just look at it and go, wow, this is a game-changing product that an ordinary person can buy a car, and it comes with a 1-month free trial of this. It comes with all the hardware, and they can do hands-free driving on city streets and highways. For a long drive, this is so killer. You know, you can eat a sandwich, and the thing's not going to bother you. Just, hold the sandwich. If the lights pop up, you look at the road. You can do that without doing anything with your hands. It's great.
Right. I've really been enjoying it, and it just makes for a different experience. And the thing is with the steering wheel nag in the past, especially when you were going around a turn, for example, and it would ask you to tug the steering wheel, those were the worst situations. Because then
I know.
oftentimes you'd torque it too much, or you wouldn't torque it enough. So not having to do that is great. And by the way, you can still use the scroll wheel. Like, for example, if you're wearing sunglasses or a hat, you can still use the scroll wheel to torque the wheel. But yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of progress, and I'm very pleased with how it's going. And I can really see a driverless future here sooner rather than later.
Andy.
Hey, Rivian Bull, Tesla Bull, R1S owner. You say they took 3 months to negotiate and got less than that in runway, but it didn't take all 17,000 employees 3 months to negotiate. So that's kind of a stupid argument. Why would Mercedes even want Rivian, R1S, fourth best selling EV in Q1, incredible brand? Why wouldn't they?
Omar?
Sorry, I was going down and up. What was the question?
He said he said your argument was stupid.
Which one?
The 3 month for 2 months of runway thing. That is a dumb argument because
Well, it's relevant because if you need to survive and it takes you longer to raise the money than the money keeps you alive, you're going to run out of runway.
you're
Right?
spending 2 months. You're spending 2 months. Okay, you're getting 2 months of runway, but that's to run a 17,000 employee company.
Look, I'm a Rivian shareholder. I own 420 shares of Rivian. I want the company to do well. What the company needs to do is not raise $1 billion and buy 2 more months. They need to actually have positive cash flow. So that's really the key thing here. And this is unsustainable. You cannot raise and raise and raise eventually. Eventually, shareholders get diluted to hell and the share price falls, right? So this is the issue. They need to actually, if they want to survive, be cash flow positive.
Presumably, Rivian's getting something out of this.
What are they getting out of that money?
Capital.
They're getting money, yeah.
No, besides capital, what are they getting, Andy?
Buying power, economies of scale.
How are they getting buying power, economies of scale?
Because Volkswagen Group, through the joint venture, can, negotiate, massive discounts on hardware.
But they haven't been able to realize those for themselves. Like, they don't even produce EVs profitably with their massive scale already. So why do you think it's going to be different going forward?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
They actually
The
do.
other
They
thing,
let me
the
hold
other
on.
thing I
Just
wanted,
hold
one
on.
other,
Just one
one
second.
other
One
thing, and
second.
then I'll drop. I
And
just wanted
no,
to
no,
point.
no, Andy, I don't want you to drop. I just want to ask you. So you're a investor, right? What percent of your portfolio would you say? I mean, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but what percent of your portfolio is in Rivian?
Percentage of portfolio, way less than 1%.
Okay. So then, were you a Tesla investor early on?
Early, 2016.
Okay. So, and you drive a Tesla yourself, I'm assuming?
No, I have a Rivian R1S.
Oh, okay, I got you. Why Rivian R1S, not a Tesla Model Y or Model X, let's say?
When I was looking, I needed 3 rows, and to me, the R1S is one of the most beautiful vehicles on the road. That's just to me. It's a
Yeah, I got you.
compelling vehicle to me.
And you want the company to succeed, obviously, right?
What?
You want the company to succeed, obviously. And so I'm trying to understand where this kind of like, why do you feel, I mean, you appear, I mean, I don't know your base, but you appear a bit kind of worked up. What's going on? If it's only 1% of your portfolio, what's the frustration? Where's the frustration coming from?
I guess I just want to, hear the argument, the 3 versus 2 month thing. I just had an opinion to state about that. That's all.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
I love both companies and would gladly drive a Tesla as well. And in fact, the full self-driving stuff is incredibly compelling. Rivian's nowhere near that.
Okay, and what's the other thing you want to point out?
Well, just the Ford and Mercedes deals with Rivian were dramatically different. The Ford one was for them to use Rivian's skateboard, probably in their Explorer EV. And who knows what happened there, but it was, right post-COVID production issues, supply chain issues. The Mercedes deal was for a joint venture factory in the Eurozone, and Rivian was the one that pulled out, but we don't really know much about why.
Okay, got you. Rich?
All right, thanks.
Hey, Alan, thanks. This question was actually for John, but it doesn't look like he's up here in Chicago, and I've been using 12.3.6, and I'm still having some
Well,
really.
he specified that he uses 11.4.1, and he said, I love this version. So it might be a version.
Right, but I was curious where he was testing in Chicago, because his second comment said that he was in Schaumburg, which Schaumburg has a lot wider streets, and that's not Chicago. So I'm having a little bit of difference in.
Gotcha. Okay, well, when he comes back, I can ask him. Bill Bob Joe?
You're running an older version than him, obviously, so
Oh,
you'll be sent the
100%.
new version soon.
Understood.
Okay, Bill Bob Joe?
Yeah, as far as what Rivian would get out of this deal, if they can get Volkswagen to adopt their architecture, which they designed to be scalable and transferable to other vehicles, of course it increases their scale. Volkswagen's putting $2 billion, they're funding the joint venture, and that joint venture would end up producing, the ECU topology and selling it back to both manufacturers, and that's all funded by Volkswagen at a much higher volume, and it would reduce Rivian's COGS significantly.
Let me ask you something. So when Omar posted this morning, right before the close, right before the open or at the open, that he bought put options with $14 strike price, you said it was a terrible deal. Do you still think it's a terrible deal?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to make money going long options when a company
well, the stock
has
just
volatility.
went from like $17 when he bought it to now his strike price is 14, right? Omar, you're already up on your position, right?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of break even.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, is when the volatility spikes in such a way, options get so expensive that when you just go long options, you need a huge move in the price to become profitable. That's why I said it was a bad trade. Not that Rivian wouldn't have a pullback. Of course, after a 30% gap up, there's going to be retests of those support levels in there.
Of
Well,
course.
you know,
Who
at
couldn't see that coming?
$12, I
Hey,
break
Billy,
even.
Billy, where do you think it's going to go from here?
Yeah, I think it's going to go up, and I think Tesla's going to go up as well. I'm sure these two companies trade together pretty closely, although Rivian has a much higher beta, so it sees much larger drawdowns. But I think they're both turning around. They both have significant upside coming. So as far as where it will go up, I don't know how far, but I think it'll do well from here.
Omar, are you holding on to your position through year end? I think the expiration was year end, right?
Yeah, I think it's January 17th, 2025. And the break even would be about $12.
Gotcha. So I guess you guys have a literal coffee bet in your hands here with Billy Bob betting that's going to go higher from here. Omar holding on to his put position, meaning betting that's going to go lower from here. I guess we're going to find out.
Well, I mean, you know, you just kind of use logic and you say, okay, equity raise should be dilutive and should actually be a bad thing. But this was sort of spun in a very careful way. I mean, even I at first said, oh, this looks like a great deal. And then you sort of look into the details and you go, okay, well, it's not quite what they're making it out to be. It's not a $5 billion investment yet at all. And, you know, you always kind of hear this, like a lot of anger, even like when we went to Nikola and met with Trevor, you had people saying like, hey, you know, don't be mean to them. You know, we need to support all clean EV companies, da da da. But, you know, ultimately, I think it kind of helps the company. It helps everybody to just kind of look at things critically and say, you know, this is a company that is looking at how they're going to get the funds to ramp R2 to profitability. And that's an extremely challenging thing to do. As much as it kind of looks easy now, it is not. And they haven't even demonstrated that they can be profitable on a gross margin basis yet.
Billy, did you listen to the call?
Yeah, I did.
Is there anything on the call that we should know that we didn't talk about?
I don't think so. I think there was already a kind of a recap given. It was mostly what was in the press release.
Yeah. Anything specific, like for example, in Q4, we continue to expect gross margin positive, anything along those lines?
No, I think they've reiterated that guidance, and I'd kind of be curious to know if you know the timing of this deal. Rivian shut down in April. They implemented this new ECU architecture into the R1. It's called Gen 2 now. I wonder how much Volkswagen was able to peer into that and see what the new financial situation is, the new COGS on these vehicles before they made this commitment.
That's a great question. Omar, what do you think about that? Do you think Volkswagen got some sort of early look into, or more specific look into their plans around R2 or the refresh R1? Sorry, refresh R1.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they would be granted pretty extensive access into pretty much everything as part of their due diligence process. So I imagine they do have a pretty good handle on what COGS are going to look like going forward, or at least what the company's projections are.
Wow. Interesting. Interesting point, Billy. Danny.
Who is the best player who is likely to solve FSD within the next few years?
Danny, we're talking about Rivian right now.
I know. I'm just
It's the
moving
second
on.
time your second time you're trying to change topics without my approval. Not cool. So Omar, that's an interesting topic, right? Interesting that you believe maybe Volkswagen got an early look into the profitability of this refresh R1 vehicles. and yet you bet against the company. And yeah, that's. I mean, let me tell you this way: like, if Rivian can actually turn the gross profit on R1, then their stock should go higher if that's true, right? You agree with that statement?
Yeah, but they'll still be burning cash, obviously. I mean,
yeah, I mean, there's going to be some operating profitability issues, but they can kind of bridge finance that if they can actually turn a gross margin positive situation with the refresh R1.
I mean, if they're gross profit positive, that's a benefit, definitely. But their operating expenses are still huge. They're still going to run through that cash pile, and they still need to ramp R2. There's a huge amount of investment they need to make that happen. So, really thinking about when those gross margin benefits might be realized, it probably won't be in Q2. Q2 might actually see, I don't know, lower sales levels, lower revenue as a result of the changeover, which, I think investors would kind of accept as part of a transitory thing. But that could be part of the reason why they wanted to make this deal close, even just through a convertible note before the end of the quarter, so that they can report their quarter end cash balance at a $1 billion higher level. So yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of moving pieces there, but really until the second half of the year, we wouldn't really see what the new sort of production process is capable of in terms of their P&L.
Billy.
Yeah, Q2 is going to be ugly. They had to offer a lot of incentives to move the pre-refresh inventory. The factory was shut down. It was retooled. It's going to be bad. But I think people are underestimating the significance of being the second, American automotive manufacturer to achieve gross profit on a battery electric vehicle. I don't think anyone else has done it but Tesla.
So hold on. How do you know Tesla is the only one who achieved positive gross margin on pure EVs? You have no proof.
Well, every company that's announced that I've seen, like Ford loses 100,000, etc. Have you seen any who have advertised that they've achieved positive gross margins?
I mean, I would estimate that BYD is probably gross margin positive, or Kia.
I mean, Lucid has to have positive gross margins, right?
No, I don't know if they do, but if I had to, it's just that you're making a statement that no one else has, so you have to prove that.
Okay,
right?
That's fair. So let's take that off the table. But once Rivian has achieved positive gross margin on the vehicle, and they've developed this cheaper technology that'll go into the next vehicle, then all they need is scale. They just need to make more vehicles to become profitable, and it becomes much easier to fundraise. And when you look at the coming trade war that's already started with tariffs on Chinese EVs, the value of an American pure BEV manufacturer who's achieved gross profits is going to be much higher than it is today. I totally agree that the price will be higher when they achieve gross profit.
Now, let me ask you this. So you just said, I've heard the elder Rivian bulls say too, that Q2 is going to be horrible. Q2 is going to be horrible. It's a given fact. Everyone seems to agree on that front. When did you get to that conclusion? And when, I know RJ said it too, or hinted at it, when was the first time he hinted at it? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Yeah, because I think this is a very recent thing that people have been talking about. Whereas when he announced they were going to do some sort of a shutdown late last year, he didn't mention anything about Q2 financials going to be bad, right?
May 30th, he said it'll be messy.
Yeah, exactly. So this is very recent, like a month ago, maybe. Whereas, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I wonder how much of it is because of this production ramp versus them realizing the demand for R1T, R1S is just not there right now.
Yeah, I think it's a big combination of things. It could be that. It's also discounts on inventory to move it. And it's also big punishing amounts of fines that they're having to pay to get out of some of their supplier contracts that they signed in 2018, 2019, 2020. So it's a combination of those that are making a couple of bad quarters here, but they've guided to kind of getting past that and improving things going forward. So obviously we have to wait and see, and they need to prove that they can meet their guidance. But if they can, I'm pretty optimistic about it. And then also keep in mind that when they delayed their Georgia facility and announced they were going to start R2 production in Illinois, Illinois gave them some sort of cash grant as well. I think it was like 800 million of cash in this quarter. So they may have actually positive cash if you consider 1.8 billion cash coming in, and the burn might be a little bit less than that.
Well, the burn refers to operating cash flow minus capex. These are financing cash flow, which is a different part of the cash flow statement. You know that.
Yeah, totally agree. I just mean the cash on their books that they report might even go up this quarter.
Interesting. Omar, do you think that's likely?
No, just based off the fact that last time they had over $1 billion in net cash used in operating activities. I think like 1.3, somewhere around there. So even with an additional $1 billion, assuming it was the same as last quarter, you'd still have a decrease in cash. Now, I think one thing that's interesting is they have operating expenses in the first quarter of 957 million. So even if you were to achieve positive gross profit, you're still burning $1 billion a quarter or more, depending on the level of investment you're putting into R2 and other things. And that investment still only lasts you, a quarter, even if you're, profitable on gross profits. I think a lot of people don't understand the nature of gross profit versus net profit. You have, so imagine your son comes to you and says, "Dad, I made $50 today." You say, "Son, that's great. How did you make $50? He says, "Well, I sold a $100 bill to some guy for $50. He didn't really make any money at all, right? There's more parts content in what you sold than what you brought in. So you're supposed to take the gross profit you make, right? You have, let's say, $100 of parts, you sell them for $120. Now you've got that $20. Out of that $20 that you make gross, you can then pay the expenses of your business, the employees, the office, whatever. And then you've got some net profit left over, hopefully, when you subtract that. So Rivian, even if they get to break even, meaning they're not losing money on every vehicle they sell, the rest of the business is still burning $1 billion. And some of that's non-cash items. I think they had, for example, 200 million in stock-based comp. But you're still obviously seeing a considerable cash burn that ultimately creates a situation where the company needs to raise more money through more dilutive events such as this to stay open. Ideally, you want to get to a situation where the business itself is producing so much cash that they don't need to raise any more money.
Yeah, well, Billy says that they're gonna get to a point where these vehicles are profitable. The R1 after the refresh and the supplier negotiations and everything. Billy says, Billy, how confident are you that R1 is going to produce gross profit positive?
Fairly confident in that. I think they've mostly achieved
like 80%.
Sure. Yeah.
You're 80% confidence. Wow.
I mean, you look at inventory levels, they're not looking great across the industry. The pricing situation, right? Because you have to think about when you talk about gross profit positive, it's not only their costs they have to control, but also pricing. They have to be able to sell at a good price and not have to discount, even though others are discounting like crazy, and then also keep their costs under control. So there's really two pieces of it. And they only have control over really one half of it.
Billy? Omar says they can only control somewhat their cost. They can't control price. And now that Cybertruck's production is ramping, The upgraded Model Y is going to enter production sometime early next year. FSD is getting better. Other EV makers are cutting prices like crazy. That Rivian may not be able to sell at the prices they're assuming to get to that gross margin positive. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And hey, we could have a recession later this year, like you've kind of been forecasting, and they could be totally screwed and go out of business. I personally, I think they'll make it. I understand the story of gross profit versus net margin and net profit. But what you do with Rivian is you say, okay, let's say they achieve gross profitability, they can reduce their losses to 900 million a quarter, and then 700, and then 600. The question is, do they have enough cash to get through that ramp until they can scale R2 enough to become profitable overall? I think they do have that cash, or if they don't, it'll be very easy for them to raise a couple more billion if needed. And so that's why I have confidence that they'll survive, even though gross profit, they'll still be burning cash when they achieve gross profit.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope Rivian survives. I just want to make it clear, while we have so many people in the space, that there's no cell in my body that doubts Omar wants Rivian to survive. Okay. And I want Rivian to survive too. And Alex wants Rivian to survive as well. Nobody wants this company to go bankrupt. Okay. But there's also the reality of these financial statements and the financial situation of the company. And we got to be honest about those things. I know there are some Rivian speakers out there that are adamant about not talking about the financial statements, which I don't understand why. But these are the realities. That's why Billy Bob Joe is on the speaker board and not many others. Andy?
Hi.
Do you have something to say?
Oh, I wanted to say, I was wondering, how many of you have driven a Rivian?
Not me. I've talked to a bunch of people that own it in Austin, but I've never driven one.
I drove a R1T quad motor.
I think it's irrelevant, though. I think that's irrelevant. I know Alex and I, and Omar and I, and pretty much I disagree with pretty much every bull about this, but I think
Hey,
data
I
speaks
drove
for
a
itself.
Nikola Tre actually too.
I think using the company's
With
products.
Trevor.
I think using a company's products combined with the experience of the brand, combined with all of these financial things going on, gives you a better picture of whether or not something is going to succeed or fail in the future.
Yeah, I think that's completely wrong.
I mean, what was a great product?
Using the products doesn't enhance your opinion.
No, actually, it can work against you because now you kind of get a connection to it. Like some of the best investors I know, they actually try to stay away from the products or the management to be more independent.
I guess I'm not really talking about investments so much as an organization or a company's survival. Maybe you think they're the same.
Yeah.
I mean, what was a great product? Movie Pass. $8 a month, all the movies you want. It turned out, though, that when people got that, they went and saw movies all day. Certain people.
You need
So it
more
wasn't
than
a
a
very
great
good
product,
business.
obviously.
Yeah.
That's why I was just wondering. I was just wondering about the experience of Rivian products amongst the speakers. I was just curious. Thank you.
I mean, I don't think
Man,
anyone.
you're so why are you getting so defensive? He's talking, you're cutting him off. I know this is your first time, but we usually try not to cut other people off on the speaker board.
I apologize. I didn't mean to, and I'll be more careful.
Okay. One more.
Yeah, I don't think it's a really a big deal, but I mean, I don't think anyone doubts that they have great products. Nobody said the product isn't great. I think they, just like you said, a 3-row large EV that is kind of a lot like Tesla in terms of the software architecture and everything. they hit a segment that nobody else did, and they got there first. So nobody's disputing that. But in terms of actually surviving as an independent business, it requires a lot more than just having a great product. You need to have a great product and a great business. Having a great product definitely helps, but it's not automatically going to get you in a situation where you'll just survive off the merits of your own product.
Yeah, people say, like in the replies, for example, people are like, these are great products. Businesses was failing, Tesla doctor says. But in my mind, um, a company or a product has to be sustainable on every level, including financial level. It has to be financially sustainable to qualify for the adjective of great. And if it isn't, I mean, we can say like, I think the product looks great. The product looks good, right? It looks great. Maybe it drives great, as Andy says. I don't know. But there's no doubt they look good. They look more traditional than the Cybertruck, let's say. I know the owners are fanatics of the product. But to say that the product is great, it's a stretch. Billy and Alex.
I think this is the perfect way to frame the conversation around Rivian. Like, this is exactly what should be talked about. The product is great, but their business model is pretty much the reverse of Tesla. So Rivian went out and they went to many high-end component suppliers, and they bought components and put together a really great vehicle. But their challenges then, and they did that just to start production. They knew they would take losses, but they wanted to build their brand. I think they've done a pretty good job building their brand. It's a pretty powerful brand right now. But their challenge is, while they're producing that vehicle, in the background, they're re-engineering the entire thing to be able to build it all in-house. They started with the motors. They're now producing in-house dual and quad motors, so their propulsion is in-house, vertically integrated. They've now moved to the ECU topology, firing all their part suppliers for ECUs and just using 3 ECUs that they've designed in-house. And so they've really did the reverse of Tesla, where Tesla did all that work up front and then launched the vehicle in mass production. And so it is a question as to whether this kind of method will work, and whether they'll be able to achieve this before they run out of cash. I think they will. Many people think they won't, but ultimately only time will tell.
It's interesting to note, I think, that if they'd taken longer time and produced things in-house and developed all of it in-house, they would have missed that monster IPO. Never would have happened.
Alex.
No, basically everybody covered from Omar. Everybody that spoke since covered what I wanted to say, so I'd be just repeating.
Andy, what do you mean?
So they had a blockbuster IPO right before the market crashed at the end of 2021. And I'm just saying that whatever they did to get to the point where they could IPO and they had a product to sell, that was just an incredible moment. If they'd waited a month, 2 months, 3 months longer, they may have not gotten that 18 billion from their IPO.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to RJ. Yeah, he's great at financial engineering. He's really, really good at attracting financial capital, no doubt about it. He goes on CNBC interviews. He convinced Volkswagen that the company is going to be profitable and sustainable. Lots of retail investors in the stock, despite the stock going down 90%. And the stock goes up 20% after going down 90%, 95%, and people are celebrating, which is amazing. But he knows how to get people excited, and just put more capital in there.
Yeah. It's a dilutive raise and people got excited. Yeah, woohoo!
Billy, why do you think Amazon didn't jump into this deal?
Before I answer that, I would just say the price on Tesla used to jump with convertible raises as well. I think, just gives investors confidence that the company can raise and that they'll survive. So pretty normal price action, in my opinion. As far as why Amazon didn't want in on this deal, they have no use for next generation electric vehicle ECU topology. They don't manufacture vehicles.
Where do you think Rivian's ECUs are going to go into? Which products from Volkswagen, or are these going to be new products?
I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I saw that Volkswagen was going to start up the Scout, the International Scout program again, which is pretty similar to an R1S, maybe a little more rugged, bare bones, but kind of an off-road SUV. And so might be a perfect platform for them to collaborate on just to start out with.
So they didn't specify which vehicles just yet. They're going to find out. I mean, I think Omar, I guess, spoke to it earlier that the details of the JV seem pretty early on. They haven't baked anything yet. Omar, did you see Unusual Whales tweet about? It's pretty clear people knew about the Rivian. This is on YouTube, on your screens. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's pretty clear people knew about the Rivian-Volkswagen deal beforehand and traded it. Traders turned $100,000 into $2 million plus. People have been piling into Rivian call options apparently for the last 2 weeks. What do you think about that, Ryan? He has all the kind of receipts showing it.
Yeah. Insider trading, it's pretty common. I mean, I actually saw similar patterns in other companies. Like if you look at Xpeng, for example, the stock is just tanking, like it's just falling off a cliff. And then it starts going up a little bit. And then the deal is announced. And then it continues going up. And then now it's lower than where it was when the deal was announced. So you see people sort of trading off these patterns, and it's possible that they wanted to create this impression of, this huge deal, and with this huge after hours market reaction to try and maybe get some exit liquidity.
All right, let's switch to 12.4. Do you think 12.4.2 is going to go out wide before the end of the quarter? Or do you think this is more of a Q3 story now?
Let's see. When does the quarter end? It may go out before the end of the quarter, but probably at this point, most people are going to be getting it next quarter.
Yeah. The other thing people are actually wanting to know is why the Tesla stock is going up today. It's up 4%. I believe last I checked, and just check again. Up 5%, closing at the, and we still have another hour to go. Up 5% today, nearing $200 per share. What do you think is driving this surge in the stock price? It's not the Rivian deal, I hope.
Well, there were a couple of notes that people put out, but, I don't get excited when it goes up. I don't get excited when it goes down. I ask honestly, how is it still under 200 when we have hands-free FSD starting to roll out? I mean, this is really a game-changing product. I think the core vehicle business, as we just talk about Rivian, and everybody sort of makes these comparisons, Tesla is the only profitable pure EV company in the world. I think maybe Li Auto maybe posted a profit or something, but on a sustainable basis, there's really only Tesla, right? So who is really moving us into an all-electric future here? Is it BYD? I mean, they're making hybrids for most of their cars. Until just a couple of years ago in 2022, they were actually making gas cars, like pure ICE cars, right? Who is going all in on EVs and making millions of them and making money on it in a sustainable way? There's only Tesla. And honestly, it feels like people don't really appreciate the challenge of building a business, not just building a product, but building a business that's going to endure and that's going to continue to push for EVs. It's extremely difficult to do. So I think Tesla's very underappreciated. Even the automotive business is a business that anybody would dream of owning. But with their leader, they're not even satisfied with just being a leader in building the car of the future. They have a product like FSD 12.4 that is just a game changer in how, even in the concept of what driving is or what a car is. I mean, this is a really transformative product, and people are going to be able to see it right away when they see their friend driving around and they're not touching the wheel. When they were touching the wheel, they couldn't tell they were using FSD because it still looked like they were driving. When they see their friend just sitting there and the car's doing everything itself, they'll say, wow, what is that? And how do I get it? It's going to spread virally, I think, especially as the software gets better and better. I just know it based on my experiences with people, showing it to them, seeing their reactions. They've worked really hard and they've got a really game-changing product here. And their new cars, like the Model 3 Performance and the Cybertruck, are the best ever. So I think there's just a lot of negativity, especially the Q1 print. It's created a lot of uncertainty around this product transition. The introduction of the new Model 3, the ramp of the Cybertruck. People have all kinds of worries have boiled up to the surface. All of people's fears about different things, a lot of it irrational. And if we get a good delivery print coming up, in the next week, and they continue to have decent deliveries through the year, I think, Model 3 qualifying for the tax credit now definitely helps. I think you're seeing sales pick up in China, which is really encouraging. I think the introduction of FSD in China will only accelerate that. Um, and then, you have rates coming down in the back half of the year. I think as all these things happen and the cloud sort of lifts over this, we've had kind of clouds lifting slowly. Elon's comp was a cloud. That one's starting to lift now. It's still not completely gone, but it's mostly gone. And I think as all these clouds start to lift, people will realize this is a multi-trillion-dollar company trading at a $500 billion valuation. And I think it'll probably outperform all the other Mag 7 stocks. Personally, I want to build a bigger position in it. And yeah, FSD 12.4. Elon's not exaggerating about the miles per intervention going exponential. It's not easy. It's not just, snap of a finger. There's a lot of work that has to go into training and validating these models. But he's right. It's really working. And they haven't even started to touch hardware 4 yet. They've got hardware 5 in the pipeline. You're seeing other services operate driverlessly, launching, Waymo opening to the public in San Francisco. It's really happening. Self-driving is really scaling, and nobody is in a better position to scale it globally than Tesla. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
pinned at the top of our screens a question as is up 5% today, despite 3 downward revisions on production deliveries for Q2. Why do you think? Omar just gave his explanation, the comprehensive explanation. If you want to reply with 3 factors that you believe are most likely impacting the stock price today, your tweet is at the top of your screens. Uzi, what do you think is driving the stock price today?
Well, the first one I mentioned, I bought the top in 2022 at like 260, and now I'm green because I DCA'd to 140. So anyone who's down bad because of that, that's a myth. Everything's fine. I think what's driving the stock price today is probably some of China. And I think what China is really good with is short because they're a command control economy. FSD seems to have more, it's more likely to spread faster there. Wall Street's coming around. That's the second factor. They don't respond to Elon's word like they respond to Jensen Huang. When Jensen's hyped about humanoid robotics, saying it's a $50 trillion industry, they respond to that. Whereas when Elon did, they don't. And I think it takes time to process new technology, so that's coming. And then the third, I'm not sure yet. I think it's probably, I'll leave it at that. I think Tesla's being digested, and no shareholder vote. It's just a lot more clear and tranquil.
Yeah, people are. Michelle says people taking profit from Rivian and putting it back into Tesla. Maybe, Omar. Do you think we're getting that Rivian bump?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily related, but who knows? It's impossible to tell with the market.
So you think that we will actually get a 5x to 10x improvement in interventions per mile or miles per intervention? It's quite a statement. Alex, are you buying more shares?
Always when I got cash.
Yeah, just kind of dollar cost averaging. All right. What else on your radar? Are you following the Cybertruck production rate? Alex?
Oh, no, I'm not following. Like, I'm not counting cars. I'm not. No. But you remember
how does Alex look at Tesla long term? Like, what do you kind of keep your eye on?
I love looking at the teardowns, seeing how they're improving manufacturing technology. Of course, the unveil events, I watch them multiple times, trying to read between the lines of what they're not explicitly saying. I'm looking also at the landscape, what others are doing or not doing. And, that's basically it. There's no, and of course, there's also the whole ecosystem of Elon companies. You can't think about Tesla without, having in the back of your mind what he's achieving with SpaceX, Neuralink, everything. It's like
He's crazy. He does not give up.
And he sets goals that are like so far out. Like, honestly, like, I think his furthest goal is probably right now that we can grasp, because other ones, AGI, it's hard to figure out even what that is. You can't, you get 10 people in a room, you get 10 different definitions of what AGI is or means or whatever. But like, just colonizing Mars, like if you listen to the latest Everyday Astronaut interview, he's talking that the current factory that they're basically setting up now at Starbase is probably going to be good for like 100 starships a year, like one every 3 days. But then he says, like, we're going to need thousands of these, and they're going to need like thousands of them in a like 2.5 year cycle, or roughly, like when Earth and Mars aligns. So can you imagine, like, these are like huge factories that build huge things that needs like 33 engines for the boosters, that need 6 engines for the Starship, and be able to refuel in space. So you got to double that number. It's just mind-blowing, but that's the goal he sets. And then he figures out small problems as he goes along, iterates on the tiles, on the this, on the that. It's nobody is even close to where it's at. And then you got actual successes like Starlink, and you look at the Mini, they're also manufacturing those, and the satellites, and they're launching them. I don't know. It's hard to, somebody who doesn't, like, somebody who knows and follows a little bit Elon, they get it. But if somebody on this planet has been living on an island, doesn't know anything, and you have to tell them like about Elon Musk, it's like it's like a fairy tale. They're not going to believe you. They're going to think you're exaggerating or something. But no, it's not.
That's it. That's
Go
such a
ahead.
good point, Alex. I never thought about having a huge industrial giant like SpaceX. They're kind of like a Boeing or a Northrop Grumman type industrial giant, but they also have a successful consumer product with Starlink, and they were able to market it and sell it direct to consumer. It's very unusual in the business world, right? You're either usually B2B or B2C.
Yeah, and the Falcon is basically financing it all. That little rocket and that little Merlin engine, that's nothing that special, turned out to be like instrumental in funding it all. Because without a reusable booster, they could, and a very low cost second stage, they couldn't launch like Starlinks every 2 days, payloads. So it's, he has the vision of, putting the pieces, and then Starlink, once that's up and running, and that's going to also fund the next stage to go to Mars, to the moon and Mars, and so on and so forth. So it's like he doesn't just have the vision, oh, let's colonize Mars. He knows how to implement it and execute it in a way that makes it possible. Like the only thing that's stopping him like is physics. All the rest is like, yeah, he'll figure it out.
Okay, good. I want to get Alex's view in a second about the Blue Origin situation, but let's go to Uzi first. He's had his hand up. Uzi?
Just in the long-term perspective, I'd say rendering driver attention is useless. So getting nag removed, that makes the car a pleasure mobile instead of a transport mobile. And that goes into what Omar was saying about the virality of FSD. With Robotaxi, I also am looking at the form of it. I think it's going to be stainless steel, so that if there's any accidents, the passengers will be safe. And then Google and Waymo expansion is really good, I would argue, for Tesla, because the market is looking at that. And then on the other side, Optimus, more autonomy, and then beating teleoperation and the data collection sort of limit with that.
Okay, thank you. Alex, what do you think about Blue Origin SpaceX saga that's going on?
Okay, so he's being a jerk, basically. He's being a dick. I don't know. Is this allowed? Is this swearing?
No, I think that's okay.
Okay, well, that's what he's being. They're always trying to slow down. Like they try to slow down like the reusable rocket thing with the silly patent thing. Then they try to slow down Starlink by, well, you know, you can't give him the license to deploy those. Now they're talking about, well, they complained about SpaceX getting Pad 39A, which is the historical site of the Apollo missions. It's he's always like, you know, trying to stop SpaceX from going that fast, you know, and developing and doing, and it's very like anti-competitive type, whereas Elon is completely the opposite. You know, he actually helped. You know, if he wanted to be a jerk, he wouldn't have launched the 2 satellites from Amazon. The what's it called? Like it has a weird name, Kuiper Belt, Kuiper satellites. They want to basically copy Starlink, and they needed like to send 2 prototypes, and SpaceX, you know, send it for them. You know, so he's never trying to stop progress. So that he's being a jerk. Aside from that, yeah, more private companies like developing, you know, space tech, and that's all good. You know, it's like I have nothing against Jeff, like personally in that sense, but he needs really to tone it down with trying to like harm or slow down or do whatever with SpaceX. You know, they should try to like limit regulation and everything, and not trying to do some lawfare and try to exploit, you know, openings in the regulation to, you know, go to court and basically try to, you know, to prevent SpaceX from achieving what it wants to achieve. Like SpaceX is not trying to stop Blue Origin for achieving whatever they want to achieve. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. If there are other people who are following SpaceX closer than I am, you're welcome to request to speak and share your view. Any details that you may have are relevant, please request to speak. Omar?
I just wanted to mention that my Rivian $14 puts are about to be in the money. It's trading at $14.22 right now.
And you know, Omar ends his sentence with that he hopes the company will survive, and this is just a trade on the secondary markets. He hopes that
it was just a few $100, just for fun.
Yeah,
just exactly. To test out my thesis.
Yeah, just like I bought 1 share of Nikola and made some $5 burger money. You know. Anyway. We have some interesting guesses at the top. So Bull 2035 says about Tesla's 5% increase today. He says Lucid, Nikola, and Rivian are all up today. And he says Tesla's rise is due to algorithm trading. Yoda says Q2 de-risked with positive China numbers last week. Final week will be even larger down year over year, but up quarter over quarter. Max Chung, who is a great supporter of the space, is always replying, liking, reposting the space, says probably due to autonomy, which kind of brings me to my question, Omar. How do you think the stock will trade from here into 8.8?
I have no clue. And I don't really care.
Yeah. I know you're very concerned that people are kind of setting their expectations too high for 8.8, right? I understand that.
Well, typical pattern that you see for Tesla events is a run up ahead of the event and a sell off after. That isn't to say that that's always going to hold, but that's typically what you see.
Yeah. Nathan?
Hey there. Hey, so regarding Rivian and Volkswagen, can you tell us, maybe oversimplify that deal like you're explaining it to a 10-year-old? Like, what does Rivian want and what does Volkswagen want from the deal?
Rivian just wants cash. They need cash to survive. You know, they burned through the cash they raised a bunch of times, and I mean, this company burned through $20 billion. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
and
they
they just need
spelled it
more.
out very clearly. They said, da da da, we expect to have cash to be able to, ramp the R2. That's really what this is about. Did they actually have the cash to ramp the R2? Before they didn't. Now they say they do with this deal. When you look in the finer print, it's clear that they actually still don't, but they're possibly a little closer to if they can maybe raise the funds from Volkswagen or someone else. So it continues to be a pretty challenging situation for them financially.
Yeah, the Rivian side is obvious to me, but the Volkswagen side is less obvious. What do they want that they
Yeah, Omar
can't
read
get?
early on in the space. He read the press release by Volkswagen. We had some Rivian bulls come up and say Volkswagen will have access to Rivian's once the JV is formed, which is not certain just yet. But once it's formed and regulatory approvals are secured, Volkswagen will have access to Rivian's electrical architecture and maybe some of the technologies. Who knows, right?
Look, let me put it this way.
Part of me thinks that Volkswagen. I mean, it is a fact that Volkswagen is incentivized to keep Rivian going, kind of like a divide and conquer kind of thing. I mean, look at all these debates between Rivian bulls and Tesla bulls. And I'm having to clarify every 5 minutes that we want the company to survive, but yet there's so much hate on everywhere right now between the two groups. It's very unfortunate. And if I'm Volkswagen, I'm like sitting back and watching this with a popcorn. You know, they're dividing up the investors, they're dividing up the employees, dividing the customers. This is like divide and conquer in a way.
Is intellectual property a motivating factor for Volkswagen? Do you think they want some like turnkey engineering intellectual property?
I don't know, Omar.
I mean, let me put it this way. Volkswagen has a disaster on their hands called Cariad. This is their attempt to copy Tesla. They said, we're going to make our own OS, our own architecture, just like Tesla has, and we're going to use it for all our vehicles. And they said, we're going to hire 5,000 software developers. Apparently, nobody has translated the mythical man month into German. They hired 5,000 software developers, and of course, it was a disaster. They never got anything done. Vehicles were delayed years. And I've heard they spent $6 billion on Cariad. $6 billion. And what was produced? Nothing. Nothing they can use. So compared to that, at the very least, you've got some Rivian common stock, right? That's got to be worth at least something. And then now you just bought Rivian's entire electric vehicle architecture. The minute they decide to actually do the rest of the deal, you get their entire architecture, their electrical and electronic architecture. and then you're collaborating further, you're giving them funding, but that funding that you're giving them is conditioned on the fact that the technology produced by that $1 billion is jointly owned by you and them, right? So they're really this is the solution, right? Instead of what Cariad was doing, instead of continuing to plow billions into Cariad, which has been such a disaster, it literally got Deese fired. They'll just do this and they can buy it from somebody else instead, right? And if Rivian fails, they'll maybe just scoop up the whole company. I mean, if Rivian does not get a handle on their burn and the stock price continues to decline, then Volkswagen will end up with majority control of Rivian as a consequence of this deal, because it has them investing $1 billion every year, conditional on certain milestones being met. So depending on what the market cap of the company is, let's say the market cap of Rivian falls to $5 billion or something. Well, then a $3 billion investment would result in majority control. They would own it. So, yeah, it's an interesting situation.
Is Cariad just the user-facing experience stuff, dashboard displays, or does it include like engine and battery management?
Yeah, it's deeper than that. It's the vehicle OS, but it's also everything connected to it as well. So the electrical architecture, the wiring in the car, that type of stuff.
Uzi.
And also interesting backstory. When Herbert Diess was the CEO, he was the CEO and he was also the CEO of Cariad. Then they demoted Herbert Diess. They said, okay, now you're going to focus more on Cariad. Let this other guy, Brandstatter, run the main business. But then, Cariad was such a failure, they had to get rid of him. But he really pissed off Porsche. The Porsche Macan SUV got delayed by almost 2 years because it was supposed to use Cariad, but Cariad wasn't ready. So Oliver Bloom, who was the CEO of Porsche, was pissed about that, and that really contributed to Diess getting fired. And then he ended up as CEO of the Volkswagen Group. So he's coming in as CEO with like a bitter taste in his mouth, probably just wanting to shut this whole thing down.
Uzi, you don't have to raise your hand. I mean, you've been a speaker here for a long time. You know to wait like a couple seconds after somebody's done.
I like the sense of order, but this deal does rhyme with the Xerox investment in Apple. Reading the biography right now, I mean, Steve Jobs demanded to see Xerox's technology, even though Xerox invested in Apple, stole a decent amount of it, and then made the Macintosh and Lisa. So Volkswagen might be getting the electrical part from Rivian, and it's this sharing agreement. I wonder who comes out on top and then who falls apart. It seems likely Volkswagen will steal from Rivian, and Rivian sort of made a deal with the devil, in my opinion.
Yeah, wasn't at Anyway, I'm not gonna say it. I actually created a meme that I didn't want to send out. I'm like, I thought about it. Should I send this out? Should I send this out? Like, if people are offended by my posts, they should see what's in my drafts.
That's for subscribers on X to
Yeah,
see.
exactly. Grant.
Why is Tesla up today? I'm in pain over here. I am.
Well, so there's
but...
there's a post at the top. There's a couple of posts actually. One from the morning, one from 20 minutes ago. People came up with dozens of reasons, so you can go through that. Pick your favorite one.
There's no actual consensus there. I mean, like, good for you guys. I'm hurting. I'm surprised. I can't believe it, to be honest.
Just read through the replies, and one of them will resonate with you.
I can't believe it's this low.
I mean, I'm looking at the replies, but it's surprising to me. I mean, what do you guys like? I can't imagine buying into Q2 numbers. That seems insane. But I also think that the stock is really held by people that don't care at all about Q2 numbers. So I'm not at all confident that it'll even react super negatively.
So which one is your favorite? Which one was their favorite? Which reply was their favorite?
Autonomy.
Autonomy, 8-8. Wait, I can hear you smiling as you say that.
It's a funny reason.
Okay, musical note.
Hey, can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you.
Oh, now you.
Bogdan, go ahead.
You always buy Tesla stock to hedge it, your short position.
Okay, we really can't hear you. Danny?
All right, let me try again.
No, we still can't hear you. Danny? I think when you ask, like, can you hear me? The mic could just go berserk. I think the AI picks up on that and knows that Yaman is not going to like it. And the AI goes, you know what? I'm not going to give him this stress. So I'm going to just mute someone's. I'm not muting it. It's AI muting it.
Can you hear me now, Yemen?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said he can always buy Tesla shares to hedge his short position. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So, my take on this is SpaceX based, and you had called to the crowd to discuss that. I see SpaceX delivering, as he says, 90% of all human weight to orbit in the next year or two, and as long as SpaceX is alive, I can't see Tesla dying. I can't believe he let it with so much to do. And I can't see Tesla being short of money with the billions that ULA and Boeing are leaving on the table, rolling through this tetrahedron of a company he's got going. So it's a different stock because, like Rivian, you buy, you sell based on whether you think the company will do well and exist in the future. There's no question of existence of Tesla in my mind, and doing well is just well, everybody copies them from the handles to the batteries to everything they do. So I mean, look out for stainless steel Ford Lightnings in the future. But yeah, my point, I guess, is that as long as SpaceX is kicking ass, Tesla and the rest of the tetrahedron are not
Okay,
leaving.
thank you. All right, Danny.
What kind of flying are we looking towards with the Roadster, like the SpaceX partnership? What's the consensus
Dude,
now?
you are the king of changing subjects.
I literally just came back.
Come on, the previous speaker was talking about SpaceX and Tesla, and he talks about SpaceX. I don't see how this is changing the subject.
Okay, good. Well, you want to answer the question though?
Well, I don't think you even let him finish the question.
He was talking.
How's it gonna fly? How is Roadster gonna fly?
Have you guys seen that picture of the Starman in the Roadster in space? Well, that could be you.
Wow.
This space offers a lot of stuff, but one thing that I think is underappreciated is the quotable snippets you can just straight post.
Dude, I know.
And if it's Omar saying something, you at least guaranteed like a retweet by Omar and a like. So,
yeah, exactly.
Just take
and I tried.
everything he says and just tweet it out there. Be sure you're a verified account and then monetize the shit out of everything Omar says.
Exactly. And I tried to use this like clip function that we have in the space, but it doesn't work. I can't get it to work for some reason. It is not intuitive. Or I'm dumb. I don't know which one it is. But I agree with you. Like there's so many like 5-10 second clips that people can post and it would drive engagement both to their accounts and to the space. So it's a win-win.
Like, do you have any statistics of how many people like replay these spaces versus how many people live?
We get, I mean, it changes from day to day, but the other day we had 30,000 replays, for example. But usually it's around 5,000 live listeners and 5,000 to 10,000 replays around the world in the first 24 hours.
Oh, that's nice.
I know. We have a good audience. Yeah. Andre. Alex, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, I was just going to say yes, but the true value comes in being here live. So set your reminders, like show up, and then you can get those like gems from Omar, and you can just post them as they're your own. You don't have to say like this comes from Omar or anything. Just take it as your own and just post it out there. It's great.
I agree. I don't think Omar cares for credit or receiving credit. I don't either. Take whatever people say, post it, post clips. You don't even have to tag us if you don't want to. I don't care. And but there's so much information that's shared in the space that I think needs to go outside the space too. So if people can actually do that, that would be very helpful. Let's go to Andre.
Hey, Aman. Quick question for you guys. So Starlink Mini, what do you think the likelihood of getting that integrated into Tesla Wi-Fi on the go, high-speed Wi-Fi too? I've seen a lot of people just testing it manually in their cars, but it seems like it's kind of like a perfect fit.
Yeah, Alex?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat? It was noisy.
Andre was asking about SpaceX Mini and how's it going to fit in the cars?
Well, somebody actually did a test. I probably could find it if people are interested because I liked it. I think I reposted it maybe. Somebody did a test and put it in their Model Y. So they scotch taped the thing inside, looking through the glass, and then plugged it in the back seat for power. And if memory serves me, they got, I think, 25 to 80 megabits per second going 80 kilometers an hour on the highway. So very, very good because it's not meant to be like a tracking thing. So yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing tech.
Actually, yeah, it was your post I got the idea of, right? So if we put it into robo-taxis and all of a sudden you got Wi-Fi on the go wherever you are.
Yeah, we had that conversation with Omar, like I think a couple of days ago. Do they need it? Maybe not, because, in cities, but maybe in rural areas, it's not clear that this is something that, it's surely incrementally better than not having it, but I don't think it's like necessary. That's not their primary market.
Yeah, it needs to primarily have cellular for use in cities. And Starlink satellites now can connect to cellular directly.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it probably would be for like foreign tourists, the card to go, right? If you don't have a local data plan, you don't want to pay roaming, jump into a Robotaxi and you got Wi-Fi wherever you go. One more question. What is the likelihood that we're going to see Robotaxis in China first before US? I mean, 8.8, yeah, I think even Elon Musk commented on the fact that 8 is a lucky number in China and it was specifically oriented in that. Now we have a FSD on the streets and I think it was Shenzhou. So what do you guys think that's where we're going to see Robotaxi first?
That's more like an Omar question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I would think they'd probably see it in the US first just because they have more experience there. They haven't launched in China yet. I mean, if they were able to launch FSD supervised in China and it worked well there, that'd probably be a good first step in that direction. Maybe they could announce some partnership or something, but I would expect they'd probably start in maybe Arizona or Nevada or Texas.
Interesting. And then last question, I mean, and I'll jump back to listener. Yeah,
Andre, these are extra questions, man. You gotta
that's
subscribe.
fine.
Yeah, you gotta like, repost, become a patron for these extra questions. But I'll let you a freebie.
Awesome. Thanks, Yaman. The last question is, so it dawned on me recently that if you got the Cybertruck steer by wire, that means the robotaxis what's it called, steering wheel can be fully removable, meaning that it's exactly the same car as Model 2, because we're fully testing steer-by-wire. So now you can trust that system, put in Robotaxi. So whatever car we're going to show up, that's going to show up, could end up being the same car for Model 2 and Robotaxi, just an attachable steering wheel or hideable. Omar, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the robotaxi vehicle is definitely going to be steer by wire. You know, there is no physical steering, so of course it's going to be steer by wire. And the compact vehicle is also going to be steer by wire from what I understand. So there's a lot of shared components from what I understand between the two. Both are using the new motors which have no rare earths. They have this new battery pack architecture which can accept sort of multiple different types of battery chemistries. They have this steer by wire and electrical architecture around that. And then of course the, autopilot hardware, the 48-volt, all of that stuff is going to be shared both between the new compact vehicles that they want to produce on the 3 and Y line and the dedicated robotaxi vehicle they're unveiling on 8.8.
Thanks. I'll jump off to listen. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a $30,000 car with steer by wire is going to be pretty awesome. Like, people are going to be kind of blown away by that.
All right. We started half hour early today. We're going to finish a little early. Tomorrow, Omar, I see you posted about Gen AI. Too much spend, too little benefit by a Goldman Sachs note. Maybe we can talk about that. And Grant had his hand up, but Grant, let's kind of just go through these couple of questions. Grant, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm really losing my mind here. I mean, we had a bunch of Cybertruck recalls. I just don't understand why the stock's going up. I'm like losing faith. Are you guys all just on board with buying into this company at any price, regardless of the numbers on paper, forever?
All right. Great question. We're going to end on that question. Thank you very much, everybody. And I will talk to you guys next time. Take care.